Right now, under the Federal Controlled Substance Act, marijuana is listed as a Schedule I drug next to heroin. Now, scientists argue the pluses and minuses of marijuana, but marijuana is not heroin, which is a killer drug. And that is why I have legislation in that will take marijuana out of the Federal Controlled Substance Act. Legalizing marijuana is a state issue. It should not be a federal crime. Everybody here knows a profound lesson of American history, and that is that real change never takes place from the top on down. It always takes place from the bottom on up. A 100 years ago, when workers in West Virginia and all over this country were forced to work 7 days a week, 12 hours a day, when kids were working in the mines and in the factories, working people came together to form trade unions so they could have some dignity on the job. And that's what happens when people come together. 100 years ago in this country, and the kids don't know this, women did not have the right to vote, did not have the right to get the education or the jobs they wanted less than 100 years ago. But what happened? Women stood up. Women fought back, and with their male allies, they said, you know what, in America, women will not be second-class citizens. Hundreds of years ago, amidst the abomination of slavery, African Americans and their allies had a different vision for America. Some of them went to jail, some of them died, some of them were beaten, but they said that in America we will end racism, segregation, and bigotry. If we were here in this room 10 years ago, which is no time at all from an historical perspective, and somebody jumps up and says, you know, Bernie, I think that by the year 2015, gay marriage will be legal in 50 states in this country. The person next to him would have said, you're crazy, not going to happen. Not going to happen. But because the gay community and their straight allies were prepared to take on bigotry and hatred, we succeeded in making gay marriage legal. If we were here 5 years ago, somebody jumps up and says, Bernie, you know, a $7.25 federal minimum wage is a starvation wage. We have to raise that wage to $15 an hour. The person next to her would have said, $15 an hour? You want to more than double the minimum wage? You're nuts. You're thinking too big. It can't happen. Maybe $8, maybe $9, $15, too high. But you know what happened? workers in the fast food industry, in McDonald's, Burger King, Wendy's, went out on strike. They stood up and they fought back, and then 2 years ago in Seattle, Los Angeles, San Francisco, $15 an hour minimum wage. In Oregon, in California, New York State, $15 an hour minimum wage. What is my point? My point is that ideas today that seem so radical, raising the minimum wage, making public colleges and universities tuition-free, providing health care to all people as a right, having paid family and medical leave, ending a corrupt campaign finance system, addressing the crisis of climate change, making sure that women are paid equal pay for equal work. Making sure our kids have jobs, not jail cells. All of these ideas today, they seem radical, but they are not radical. They are ideas that in fact are supported by the vast majority of the American people. But they are not supported by the billionaire class, by Wall Street and corporate America. So what this campaign is about is asking millions of people throughout this country, working people, middle-class people, young people, old people, gay people, straight people, black, white, Latino, Asian American, Native American. Making certain that the Donald Trumps of the world do not divide us up. Understanding that when we stand together, there is nothing that we cannot accomplish. Now, on May 10th, there is going to be a very important primary here in West Virginia. And what we have learned in this campaign is when there are large voter turnouts, we win. When there are low voter turnouts, we lose. All right. That's what I want to hear. I hope that on May 10th, West Virginia will have the largest voter turnout in the history of the state. And I hope very much that West Virginia will join the political revolution. Thank you all very much.
But don't really know you. I must have done something, made you walk away. Now that you're gone. all alone now that you're gone. Seducing man with the lips that say nothing. Why didn't I see it? My God only knows. Girls that I fall for, they trip my emotions. Flat on my face like some bum on Skid Row. Now that you're gone, now that you're gone, now that you're gone, I feel all alone. Now that you're gone. When you howl at the moon and it howls right back at you, a shit situation as life falls apart. I hold my head high cause I know I did nothing. Well, I can walk tall with a hope in my heart. Now that you're gone, now that you're gone, now that you're gone, I feel all alone. Now that you're gone. Alone in cold despair. No one to talk to, no one to care. And realize the wasted years are on his face. Ultimately met the tears, the chances he had, chances that cost so much. Love, life, outshined, overhyped and underlined. Love, life, outshined, overhyped and underlined. Feel so old. A tarnished heart, a heart of gold. Is it all over? Say it ain't so. Well, how can you run? Run with nowhere to go. The chances he had, always he lost so much. Life outshined, overhyped and underlined. Love, life outshined, overhyped and underlined. Sits alone in cold despair. Love, life outshined him in the end. Cross-examination of the situation. Take a last breath, new direction. Kick all those broken hearts right into touch. Excel in yourself as a new judge. Hey. Love, life, outshine, overhyped and underlined. overhyped and underlined. Love, life, outshined, overhyped and underlined. Love, life, outshined, overhyped and underlined. I'm ready for my love life lost today. I'm ready for my love life lost today.
Press room. They're in the spin room on ABC Channel 8. You should be there, Scott. I'm looking at their cams.
I don't think it's a spin. It's a
Are you seeing that? You seeing that on the screen there?
yeah. That's their studio, I guess.
Oh, you think? That's nice. It's fancy.
There's no spin room. Yeah.
That's fancy.
No debate tonight. No.
They don't do spin rooms.
Oh wait, is it?
Yeah, I don't know. That's
What?
oh, this is a town hall. Is there a town hall going on, or is this an old replay? I don't know. We're watching. You guys don't know what the hell we're watching. We're showing these numbers on screen. Anyway, Scott, what does this mean moving forward? We saw the note that Tad Devine had used the word reassess, and both of us agree that's not a great word to use. But what is he really saying there? Are we taking a break? Are we? Is there going to be a break in rallies?
No, I don't think so. I think he'll drive on to get as many delegates as he can get. And one thing that Bernie keeps saying is not everybody's voted yet. Everybody deserves the opportunity to vote before we pack it in. And so I think he'll definitely continue on.
Absolutely, absolutely. What do you think about Jane Sanders telling Wolf, hey, I'll release the rest of the tax returns when Hillary releases the transcripts? I think that's just gonna. What are they gonna do with that?
I don't think Hillary's going to release anything, but
No, they won't. But it's a good. I mean, it's an honest question, right? And just to be clear for the record, I want to make sure you're right on, or that I'm right on this, Scott. There is nothing that says that either candidate, that any candidate, has to release any of that information, right?
right.
Tax returns or transcripts or anything. It's just why do they do tax returns? Because somebody did it and they're like, okay, do that, right?
Well, I think it tells a lot about the candidate. It's,
I agree. As would releasing the transcripts, don't you think?
and actually, yeah, I guess Bernie paid a lot in charity, but I think that probably one reason they hesitated some on the is that what he paid in was a pretty low rate compared to, and he wants to raise taxes. So that's probably the reason they wanted to avoid it. But if he gave a lot to charity, I don't mind that his tax rate was what it was. Or
Shit, the guy didn't make much for cash. I mean, it's not like he was raking in the millions. And if we're going to talk about charity and we're going to talk about tax rates, then let's look at Hillary Clinton charging many different places charities, boys charity, a ridiculous rate, and then keeping all the money and using that tax loophole building there in Delaware. Speaking of Delaware, to put the money there, pretty much all the money there, right? I mean,
No, I agree, but I think that's probably one of the reasons that they avoided it is just
that's why
the
they
amount,
delayed.
yeah, the amount that he was paying. I came up to like 13%, and he wants to raise the top tax rate to 52 or whatever it is, somewhere in that range.
Well, you know,
So it's just
here's my thinking on that. Everything right now is completely reversed. The breaks, the tax breaks, should be for the poor. Businesses shouldn't be getting any fucking breaks. But for some reason, it's reversed. Businesses get breaks. The poor pay out the ass because they can't afford to actually understand how to get tax breaks. Right? It's really a fucked up system. We need a much simpler tax code. I don't know what that is, but I find it interesting that I had no idea about his 13% or whatever. You know what? Shit, that's interesting. Hillary made more in that one speech than he claimed.
Well, I think he paid something like $29,000 in taxes.
Oh, well, hey, that's
And
more than I made last year.
when you make over, that's what I was saying. When you make $200,000, that's still a decent amount of money compared to millionaires who are paying 13%.
Right, and that's on what we see, right? That doesn't include what they're hiding in the Caymans, what they're stashing through the Clinton Foundation, what they're washing through the State Department to buy weapons. That doesn't include all the back-end deals and what they're stashing in the Delaware Corporation there, one of 250,000 businesses, right? So remember, when rich people pay low taxes, they're also stashing money away that's 100% tax-free because they can afford to hire the people that know how to do that. So.
Right.
They're getting a lot of breaks. And yes, that's a blanket statement about all rich people. And I realize it's not accurate, but all right, let's take a look at Eddie's numbers and see if anything's changed drastically. We've got Connecticut. We're holding that at 50-30, 35% reporting in. Delaware's toast. Maryland toast. I don't see the number. That's really low. We've got 2% reporting in now for Maryland, everybody. I don't know that anything's really changed. Rhode Island, and we just dropped a little bit there in Rhode Island. See that? Bernie still got the decisive lead there, 55% reporting. Pennsylvania, nothing seems to be changing there with that spread there. You see, well, Hillary lost a little bit there.
16%.
Hmm?
It's still the delegate count's about the same.
Delegate, yeah, I wasn't even looking at that. You're right, the delegate count hasn't even changed. Hasn't even changed. And we were talking about this earlier, Scott. There's a lot of people that are talking about it. I'll just cover this again, or we'll probably talk about this in the morning in the newsroom if it's still even a story. But this thing right here with the State Department and there's apparently a key Clinton Benghazi email that was hidden. The White House admitted last week that it didn't release this email, and I think what we're all waiting to see is if it has any importance on Hillary. And my blanket statement on that is really to say, at this point, Scott, as we've seen, doesn't really seem to matter what she's caught with or what she does or doesn't do. She just, as long as it's not reported or reported incorrectly by establishment media, she's fine. Right?
Yeah, I haven't had a chance to read it or what it says in the email.
Yeah, I can't follow along. There's a lot going on in there, and it apparently has to do with some backstory. Just for a break in what we've got going on here, I am going to play this little clip. I wish I'd known about this earlier. Somebody dropped a link to, and I don't know who it was. Thank you, guys. You're awesome with your content finding these days in the volunteer group. This is Spread the Burn. And there's a whole bunch of clips on this playlist. Just little, 2-minute, 3-minute things. This one's Hillary versus Bernie Sanders, Goldman Sachs, and Wall Street billionaires. Let's take a listen to this.
Entitlements have to be slowed down and contained. Because we can't afford them going forward?
Because we can't afford them.
This is the CEO of Goldman Sachs. With his huge wealth, he is coming to Capitol Hill to lecture us and lecture the working families of this country on how we have to cut Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. Arrogance, I think, has no end. This comes from a man whose company, along with the rest of the companies on Wall Street, drove this country into the recession, contributed to the deficit that we're in.
You're going to have to undoubtedly do something to lower people's expectations, the entitlements, and what people think that they're going to get, because they're not going to get it.
Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid?
Some things, maybe some of the benefits have to be affected, maybe some of the inflation adjustments have to be revised. So there'll be certain things that, the retirement age has to be changed.
If there were a way to do it that would not penalize or punish laborers and factory workers and long-distance truck drivers and people who really are ready for retirement at a much earlier age, I would consider it, but I have yet to find any recommendation that I would think would be suitable.
Calling for cuts in Social Security would benefit primarily his friends on Wall Street. Because if you privatize Social Security, where are people going to get their retirement benefits? From Wall Street? Does Mr. Blankfein and his other CEOs, friends on Wall Street, really want us to balance the budget on the backs of disabled vets? Well, this senator surely is not going to support that. Us to balance Social Security.
And that I would.
Oh, stop. All right, so that's a nice little contrast there. Goldman Sachs, they are one of the worst. And yes, I know this actually from a little bit of personal experience. We will talk about that in the newsroom one of these days. One of these days. Any updates that we need to go over here, Scott? I'm looking at this.
Well, we already could tell it was going to happen, but Bernie declared the winner in Rhode Island.
All right, nice. It's nice that they did that. So Bernie declared winner in Rhode Island. The delegates, not a lot going on there, 14 versus 10. And that's unfortunate. The Maryland delegates. I'm sorry, what?
On the other side, the whole truce or the cooperation pact between Kasich and Ted Cruz was a total failure. Trump
Really?
won all 5 states going away,
Oh, man.
huge margins, and
So, is it looking like, what are they going to do? The Republicans are going to force a contested convention on their side so they don't have to pick Trump?
they're still trying, but it looks like he's going to be so close that I don't think that they can take it away from him.
No? Let's see what you guys have to say. I haven't been looking. I forgot to keep looking at questions, comments here.
I would love for them to take it away from him.
Say, what?
It would. I would love for them to take it away from him because it would cause a civil war in the Republican Party.
Oh, that would be nice. So, put them in more chaos? Let's see.
And I think you could actually, what I was mentioning earlier, go to the Republicans and talk about political reform.
Oh, they seem interested in it too, in a little bit of ways. Is the West Virginia primary an open primary? Just out of curiosity. You know?
I'm not sure.
All right. Just looking at some notes here, guys, reading what you have to say. We're going to stay in there a little bit longer. Honestly, Scott, with any of these numbers, do you think anything's going to change at this point? Are we looking at any counties that are going to surprise us, maybe in Pennsylvania?
They've declared Pennsylvania already, so.
Oh, all right. And we don't expect these numbers to change.
Connecticut's the only race that's not declared.
Well, we're hanging on there, everybody in Connecticut, with the delegate split, and this is why. This is why, everybody, that I'm not gonna hold on with you right here. We're gonna cover all this news in depth in the morning. Let me tell you why. It's about getting as many delegates as we can. All right. Right now, we've got 156 based on this count. Clinton's got 221. That's all we need to know to move forward. Did we make goal? No. Could these numbers change a little bit before tomorrow? Sure. There are other delegates in play. There's stuff going on across the country still with voter suppression in play. Not all the votes have been counted. And as we've heard from Bernie, and I could pull this piece up about where he's at and what he's doing. Right? It's all the way. This isn't about, oh, it's time to quit now because we worked so hard to get this far, we should just quit. That's not what's going to happen. The goal is to go to the convention with as many delegates as we can, with as much power as we can, and say, we, the people, are pissed. We have a lot of power here. We may not have all the power, but we're ready to insert ourselves into this DNC and make some drastic changes. That is the least. I want to make this clear. That is the least, and Scott, you can correct me if I'm wrong, the least of what we will be able to do at this convention. Yes?
Correct. And
Okay.
from the beginning, when Bernie was traveling around Iowa before he announced, he said that I want to know that that the support is out there so I can run a campaign that will help the progressive cause and that my campaign won't damage it. He didn't want to, well, look what Bernie Sanders, those low numbers mean that people don't care about those issues. But the numbers that he's put up shows that people do care about those issues. He was more concerned right away as to what his candidacy would do for the progressive cause more than he was concerned about what it would do for his political career. And he saw the support out there, and the support came through. The progressive cause has been moved forward. And
It absolutely has, and I want to show everybody a really cool way to look at this, Scott. Here, let me just put it up here. You guys, I don't know if you can see this. This is scrolling through the articles as we source them in Slack, and there's various articles about different things. But I want you to see something here. To clear the air, Sanders should challenge the New York vote. Right? Bernie Sanders is right about poor voters. The wealthy vote more, and it's hurting our democracy. Only voter suppression can stop Bernie Sanders. Is Hillary Clinton honest? Federal judge upholds discriminatory NC voter law. Okay, that's bad, but find out about it. As 5 states head to polls, Sanders vows to fight until the last vote is cast. Sanders didn't start the fire, so don't ask him to put it out. Do you see the chain here? And let me show you something else that'll get you guys inspired really quick while I'm on this. I just want to make sure everybody understands that we're in a good place. Right? We're in a good place. Well, as soon as this loads back up, I'm trying to load up the slide deck. I didn't go over all the slides, but I want to show you the narrative and as this plays out. Right. This is important here.
what the mainstream media doesn't get is it's more for Bernie. It's more about the issues than about him. And
Yes.
he can still further that cause.
Exactly. Exactly.
Move on with the campaign. It's whether
Well,
he damages Hillary Clinton for November, that's not the number one issue. It's whether he furthers the progressive cause.
exactly, and they're starting to try to call him on that, and he's being very careful about what he says in that regard. But check this out. What's in Hillary's purse was going on the other day, but the headline for this is Trump and Clinton share Delaware tax loophole address. Then we have things Bernie hates, but the headline on this is Hillary Clinton now paying trolls to attack people online. And then things Bernie hates, a colossal fracking mess, with a nice article in there about what's going on with that. And Dem Town Hall started trending for no apparent reason yesterday. Trump and Clinton share the same tax loophole. That back up in there. Things Bernie hates again. And I highlighted a couple articles, the related articles, which are Hillary Clinton now paying trolls to attack people online, and Clinton leads Trump by just 3 points. It's an interesting statement they're trying to make here, because we find out basically Clinton leads Trump by just 3 points in a new poll. So if you want to try to call her the strong leader or the one who's really going to decisively beat Trump, that's not the case, and it's starting to be shown in the narrative. Here's Election Day. I have no idea why this showed up, but Bernie's got the cover. Tony Norman, vote your values. Bernie has mine. So this, which they kept telling us was the reality, I don't think so. And even if Hillary Clinton ends up as the nomination, she will not end up with all the power. And the DNC will be forever changed. In fact, we may be able to get rid of Debbie Wasserman Schultz as part of this. Maybe, I don't know, but that could certainly be one of the things we ask for. And according to Scott, if I'm not mistaken, we've done that before. So
Yeah, when Jesse Jackson stuck it out through the primary, got Ron Brown, and is the first African American chairman.
there you go.
Democratic
So,
Party.
you know, there's absolutely every reason to continue going all the way, absolutely every reason to go after every single delegate, absolutely every reason to vote. And what the establishment media is trying to do right now is convince all the people that haven't voted yet that Bernie doesn't have a chance in hell and there's no reason for you to even bother voting for him. And that's just not true. It's just not true. Any new numbers, Scott? Let's see.
I don't think so.
I don't think so either. Oh, it looks like we picked up a little bit in Pennsylvania. Just a little bit, but nothing. 156, 221. We're just going to leave it right there, everybody. That's where it's at. I know we've got some left to report in Pennsylvania, and let's hope that gap closes in Pennsylvania. Even if it does, it's not going to mean all that more delegates or all that less delegates. Okay, we needed 189. We're at 156. We didn't gain here. That's the bottom line. We didn't gain. I mean, we gained delegates, but we didn't gain on our gap. All right? It's all right. We still got more delegates. We still have more power to go to the convention with, and that is the bottom line. This is about changing our government, changing democracy. It's not just about getting Bernie Sanders elected, and that is the difference between the establishment campaign and ours. That is the difference between an election cycle and a political revolution. So stand strong. We're doing well. Scott, is there anything else you want to let everybody know here?
Yeah, you've become a pragmatist there.
Well, no, because I still didn't say I'd vote for Hillary.
No, I understand.
Okay, that doesn't mean I'll vote for her. I can't do it out of principle. But I'm not there yet. I might still.
I think
might.
I kind of got labeled because I started shifting in this direction sooner. As to we got to start looking past the election. Then
I would agree. You were already looking ahead at this, and I thought it was a little preemptive. But you know, you saw it, and that's okay. It could still shift. I mean, don't get me wrong. There's still opportunities here for Hillary to get indicted, for something else to come out of the Panama Papers, for something else to come out of one of the piles of things she's got going on. But don't count on it.
Yeah.
You know, let's not count on that. That's like winning the lottery. We're not looking here to win the lottery. We're looking to get as many delegates as we can, because I'd love to get rid of Debbie Wasserman Schultz. I'd love to get rid of the superdelegates and just say fuck them. They don't count next time, right? And we could do that, right, Scott? That's something we could ask for, right, or demand.
Yeah.
Okay. So there's a lot of changes we can make, and then within government, within office, because Bernie now, here's another piece. Bernie now ends. Let's just say Bernie doesn't get the nom, Scott. Hi there, Scott's friend. How you doing? Let's just say, let's say he doesn't get it. Hillary gets it. Bernie ends up back in Senate, and he's got a lot more power and a lot more friends, right? So we might have an opportunity to really put forth more legislation that we're looking for than we could before, right?
Right, especially if there's a shift in the Senate, especially if there's becomes a Democratic Senate. It's possible with Trump on top of the Republican ticket.
Anything is possible with that. Let's just the moon being made of cheese is possible with Trump on the Republican ticket. That's how ridiculous it sounds at this point to just even say it. But yeah, so everybody, this is the reason Scott's pragmatist view makes sense right now is because we have to plan this out for years to go. We need to do as much as we can fast, but we can't give up. That's the thing. We can't give up. We have a planet to save. So we need to figure out how to do this. We need to strategize. We need to move forward. We don't just go, oh, shit, lost that election. Let's all go die. You know? So that doesn't mean, Scott, that tomorrow I'm not going to wake up all mad and want to go storm the castle again. I reserve the right to want to storm the castle every day. You just have to calm me down from it.
A lot, but
and all right, let's just take one more look at these numbers. Yeah, we just lost some ground again in Pennsylvania, and we lost 2 delegates. All right, we're gonna stop looking at this, and we're gonna pay more attention to upcoming goals. So what's headed next? We go from here into Indiana. So maybe that's why we're taking a moment to reassess, Scott, is there's a big break. Oh, not a big break, a week, whatever, right? But there's some break here, and then it's just Indiana on May 3rd, Guam on May 7th. We were going to fly you to Guam. Can you do some on-location reporting? It's just, can we, everybody, crowdfund, send Scott to Guam?
I'll go as long as I can get to go to the Virgin Islands, too.
Yeah, that's right, because that's coming up. So we got to send them both places. We've got Guam, West Virginia. This one is going to be fun. I didn't realize they were both on the same day, and this is my state, May 17th, Kentucky and Oregon. Where do you think Bernie stands in Kentucky? It's got 55 delegates. It's purple, from what I understand. How do you think he's going to do there?
Kentucky purple. Kentucky's pretty Republican, but
We were told by one of the who was it we had on the show who's running out there. He said it's more purple than you know.
Oh, more than we know. So he's
apparently. It's more. We hope it's more than we know, Scott. That's. I think that's what it is. But what do you think?
It's possibly a good state for Bernie. Those are the kind of states that actually Bernie could do well in. I'm not sure if it's open or closed. That would have a lot to do with it. But it's a state where there could be some anti-Hillary sentiment where you take advantage of, and so it's possible.
It is. I'm sorry. I'm reading the comments here. You guys say he's holding out for Puerto Rico? PR? Is that what you're saying?
Oh, that's
okay.
Who is holding up for Puerto Rico?
You're holding out for Puerto Rico to go there, which is on June 5th. You got the Virgin Islands on June 4th, Puerto Rico on June 5th, and then California. Then we got a bunch of big ones coming up on June 7th. That's
the Virgin Islands is the 4th?
What? Say that again?
Virgin Islands is the 4th?
Yes, the 4th of June.
And then Puerto Rico is the 5th. That's one trip anyway. They're right next to each other.
They really are. They really are. We'll see what we can do, Scott. Yeah, we'll see. All of BTV wants to just go down there. Oh, they're planning Scott's vacation. There we go. Apparently that's what's going on. You guys are awesome. Thank you for being here, everybody. We're gonna get out of here and see you tomorrow for the Real Newsroom at 9 a.m. Pacific, noon Eastern. Remember, just keep going. It's a political revolution. This doesn't stop. Phone bank, face bank. Keep going. Doesn't stop. We have already changed the democracy. It's already changed. We've already made a difference. We've already set in motion the fact that establishment media has to change a lot of things, or it's going to go down. And that right there is a massive shift. So stand strong. Take a breather after today. Tomorrow, we'll all deal with the bullshit that establishment media talks about, and we'll rage about it together. We'll get over it, we'll move on, and we'll continue with the revolution, because that's what we have to do. Thank you all for being here. Thank you for putting up with all the technical bullshit. We try to get rid of that. And some exciting stuff. I just want to talk about this for a second. We're putting together this thing in the background. I've been talking about the app for democracy for a while. And now I think we have like all the components. We've got place a vote. We've got engagement broadcasting from the Global Engagement Network. We've got the Open Debate Coalition. And we're going to bring these pieces together, and we're going to create a beautiful, beautiful, easy to maintain and scale out system so that we can do these open debates. They can be done with people no matter where they are in a distributed production environment, and we can build out these systems all across colleges, universities, the capital cities of states, towns, and we're going to build the app for democracy together. We're going to force our government, starting at the local and state level, we're going to force our government to modernize. And all the pieces are now together, and they wouldn't have come together. They wouldn't have come together if it hadn't been for Bernie Sanders. He was the catalyst for all of us to say, fuck this shit. It's time we modernize our government. It's time we participate. It's time we change this. And it may not happen exactly as we want it to this year, but it's unstoppable at this point. There's nothing they can do. We're here. We're awake. The democracy spring awakening has happened for America. And it's awesome. So thank you for being here with us. I don't know what the hell I'm going to go out with. I thought I had something perfect, but I really don't. I had a few good tunes, but I was expecting this to be totally different. So we're going to end with the happy song, because I haven't played the happy song for a while. And, you know, you guys like the happy song. Tomorrow, 9 a.m. Pacific, noon Eastern, The Real Newsroom. We'll talk about all this stuff, and we'll move on with the revolution. Feel the burn, everybody. Thank you for being here.
The wealthiest people of this country have seen a tremendous increase in their income, while at the same time, the standard of living of working people and poor people has declined. CEOs make more than 500 times of what their workers make. The middle class is shrinking. Poverty is increasing, while at the same time, the people on top are doing phenomenally well.
People always tell me, man, you're wasting your time. Can't you see the monolith is immobile? Yes, I tell them kindly, still I've made up my mind. 'Cause the sky above's as big and limitless as it ever was. Gather round, people, in the town square. It's the end of the corporate age. There's a new caveat, let the center beware. This is the end of the corporate age. There's no quick and easy remedy that won't end in more calamity.
This is a fantastic time. From my standpoint, this is the best time that I've ever had.
All the bloviators keep on spreading the meme that there's only so much room at the table, telling us we're lucky to be eating the scraps. But we've got all the facts, and we're taking our places back.
Billionaires shouldn't be allowed to hide in the shadows. Make them step out in the open where the American people can see.
Gather round, people, in the town square. It's the end of the corporate age. There's a new caveat, let the center beware. This is the end of the corporate age.
We are well on our way to seeing our great country move toward an oligarchic form of government.
There's no quick and easy remedy that won't end in more calamity.
Corporate America, Wall Street, the major campaign donors are so powerful that no president can take them on unless tens of millions of people say, guess what, Washington? You are going to start representing the needs of working families and the middle class, not just the billionaire class. We know what's going on. We are paying attention.
Huge
let's listen to Senator Bernie Sanders about what comes next, the path forward for him and his supporters.
When we began this campaign just about a year ago, we started with no political organization, we started with no money, and we had no name recognition outside of Vermont. And I want all of you to get up to Vermont and visit our beautiful state. And when we began this campaign, the media said, well, you know, Bernie is a nice guy. He combs his hair really well. Top-notch dress-up. But nonetheless, he really is a fringe candidate. The campaign is a fringe campaign, not to be taken seriously. And in the middle of all of that, we were taking on the most powerful political organization in America, an organization that elected a president, President Clinton, on 2 occasions and ran a very strong campaign for Secretary Clinton in 2008. And when we began this campaign, we were about 3% in the national polls. We were about 60 points behind Secretary Clinton. Well, a lot has happened in the last year. Today, we have now won 16 primaries and caucuses all over this country. And with your help, we're going to win here in West Virginia. We have won over 1,200 delegates to the Democratic National Convention. And in the last several weeks, the national polls, they don't show us 60 points down. A few of them have us actually ahead or a few points down. And what is also extremely important, if the Democratic Party is to look at which candidate is the candidate to defeat Donald Trump or any other Republican, what we are seeing on national polls, which have us 15, 20 points ahead of Donald Trump, far more than Secretary Clinton. Almost every national poll and every state poll has us defeating Trump, and that margin for us is significantly larger than that of Secretary Clinton. And the reason that we are doing so much better against Republican candidates is that not only are we winning the overwhelming majority of Democratic votes, but we are winning independent votes and some Republican votes as well. And that is a point that I hope the delegates to the Democratic Convention fully understand. In a general election, everyone, Democrat, Independent, Republican, has the right to vote for president. The elections are not closed primaries. We were in New York State last week. 3 million people in New York State could not vote because they were independents. Well, you know what? Those folks and independents all over this country will be voting in November for the next president of the United States.
Jack, you're on.
Hello, it's April 2016, and the Earth's crust is destabilizing. Things ain't so hunky-dory. Time to wake up, America. There were two 4.5 earthquakes that rattled Little Rock, Arkansas last night. One of them lasted for 5 minutes. They rattled jars. They rattled a lot of things.
This was not reported, was it?
This was not reported. It's not on IRIS. It's not on USGS. It's nowhere. These earthquakes are happening all over the world. We're getting reports from around the world. They're not being reported on any seismographic map. The United States, everything coming into the United States is edited, audited, and put out as a lie.
Or not put out.
Or not put out. If you cruise, please cruise on google.ru or google.gr, not google.com. But even those are being bastardized and changed by the English as they strip the news out and give it to us. They're feeding us milk, not steak. We need to know the truth. The Earth's crust is destabilizing. Between the sun's expansion, the increase in extramagnetic activity, thanks to Obama, who blew up the machine that was stabilizing the sun, on 9 November 2011, the moron shot down the machine that was stabilizing the sun. Nobody said the White House was intelligent. And as of today, everything to do with the White House will be tormented for all eternity. Everything coming in and out of the White House, everything coming in and out of Denver, everything coming in the South Central Nebraska underground, everything connected to the underground is going to be tormented for all eternity. The poop hits the fan today. Everything they do will backfire. Janet Yellen, Chris Lagarde, he's a cross-dressing freak who runs the IMF. Everything they do will fall apart. Deutsche Bank, time is up. These earthquakes lasted over 5 minutes. In 2012, they had similar earthquakes, and they weren't reported for 4 days. And there was a little reporting in the bottom of an Arkansas earthquake. Oh, we had an earthquake in the Arkansas papers. Now, a little bit about Arkansas. They have a large chimney, and I'm sitting there in Little Rock, Arkansas at the Army base. And the guy says, see those holes? Yeah. Those holes along the Arkansas River, yeah. We buried 110 88 millimeter nerve gas Nazi shells on the river. I said, and let me guess, when you dug up the shells this year, they were all empty. He says, yeah. So all the nerve gas seeped into the Arkansas River. He says, yeah. And I said, see that chimney over there? He says, yeah. See the smoke coming out of it? Yeah. You're burning U.S. Army BZ gas, crazy gas. Yeah. It's speed and LSD. You have an 80% burn rate. He says, yeah, we're really proud of that. 80% of the BZ burns up. I said, yeah, the LSD and speed floats down the Arkansas River, doesn't it? To which point they all turned white and then started laughing. If you live on the Arkansas River and you have a retarded child, thank the U.S. Army. Remember the massive die-off of the birds, Jane, about a year ago? All these blackbirds were found
Yeah, they couldn't
dead.
figure out what happened.
Every single emergency room in the hospitals were filled. Every surgeon's room was filled. Tens of thousands of people had heart attacks at the same time. Somebody did an electromagnetic pulse.
They thought it was sonic.
It was sonic, all right. It was CIA. They killed thousands of Americans from heart attacks. They just dropped over dead. They were going to restaurants, they were driving cars, whatever. All of a sudden they turned white and they just dropped over. The emergency rooms and the surgical rooms are so full. After someone had open heart surgery, they put them back in the emergency room on a stretcher. They had no recovery rooms. The ICU rooms were all full. Every hospital around Arkansas, Little Rock, Arkansas, was full. A little thing that I just learned today. It just came out in the news. What you're hearing today, you will never hear anywhere else. Now, there's a lot of drilling going underground under Little Rock, Arkansas.
What is it about Arkansas? It's like a major experimental zone.
They're trying to kill people. They want to split the Mississippi in half and kill everyone in the South because they're conservative. This is kill America time. This is time to kill Americans. It's time to wake up. You're dying in mass quantities. You're going to the emergency room with heart attacks that are induced by the cell phone at night, for God's sakes. Unplug your Wi-Fi machine and take the battery out of your cell phone. Hello, unplug the television set. They're bringing frequencies in. They killed I think it was Rhodesia, where the Russian mafia killed every single white person with a cell phone by putting a frequency in the cell phone that made them go crazy. They stole all their property and left. I mean, these are some evil people we're dealing with. They can make you go insane with that thing. For God's sakes, unplug it at night. And if you have a smart meter, for God's sakes, put aluminum foil, metal mesh between you and the smart meter. Don't be stupid. Block those microwaves from getting into your brain. These people, the Department of India clearly stated in the Department of India transportation study, the closer to a power line you live, the closer to a cell tower you live, you get cancer and neurological diseases. And when they put in a smart meter, you're as good as dead. Okay? They put a smart meter in your home, you're dead. You're dead, man. Your kids get neurological disorders, their brains are fried. For God's sakes, block those microwaves. There's a lot of... The other thing that's odd is we had a call from Arkansas, and we're getting these calls from all over.
That was just today.
That was today, but we're getting these calls from all over. They get online to order water. You can't order cases of water, and they limit you to a half a case of water.
What?
Yeah, you're limited from buying bottled water. For God's sakes, we talk about right here...
It's Food for Liberty. They have cases of water.
Oh my God, they're expensive.
It's 50-year life.
That's correct. They have cans of water with 50-year life. They also have an incredible water filter. And when you take your water and you send it in to be tested, they will give you the standard testing items. You pay for the other items, they will tell you nothing is in it. You pay them $10,000. They are not allowed to tell you that there's benzene, which they're using for fracking. They're on the internet. I mean, people... On YouTube, you light the water and it burns. They're pumping benzene into the groundwater to kill you. We've got enough oil in North Dakota bubbling out of the ground and enough oil in Southern California, which would actually be that way, in Southern California to supply the world with oil for 200 years. We got enough just outside of Gull Island, Alaska, for 20 years for the entire world. The plates ride upon oil, and we're pumping it dry, so the earthquakes are getting more intense. Instead of the plates riding, they go... instead of riding slowly. So the pumping of the oil is causing the earthquakes. We have had tachyon generators since 1931. For God's sakes, the P-51 motor ran on water in World War II. That was the Pratt Whitney 1180 motor. But they've all been suppressed. We need to pray that these people on top are flattened for the rest of eternity. We're not allowed to kill them, but we can pray that they're flattened. And everything they do fails. But God is saying everything the White House is doing from this point forward is failing. Everything the Pentagon is doing. All the weapons they're sending to Syria today, that's right, Russia, they're sending weapons today to Syria to move up the Caspian Sea to create more revolutions and more dead Russians. And they're bribing the head of the Syrian state to leave Russia. So wake up, Russia. They're doing this in China as well. Who do you think causes the garbage in Tibet? Tibet is nothing but this high plain of almost nobody with a huge pot of oil underneath it. And it catches the Pacific plate. And they haven't pumped that oil dry because they want that plate to slide. They don't want it to go and destroy. They want it to slide. That's why they're not pumping Tibet dry. That's why we're pumping the Middle East dry. When they have earthquakes in the Middle East, they're going to just flatten that place. But you can't get water. You call Walmart. You get online and try to get water. You're limited to that much. And if it crosses
Is this a certain area?
No, this is all over the place. They're limiting water. And if you cross state lines with that water bottle, it contains huge amounts of fluoride and chloride, and it doesn't have to put it in the bottle of water. So we buy local water here in the Puget Sound. There's no added fluoride and chloride, clear as bell. Plus, we have water filters for what comes out of our faucet. This is one of the reasons My producer made a deal with Food for Liberty. They have incredible water filters. The Army uses them. You can't block a biological weapon, but you can neutralize the water and kill it.
You make it basic instead of acidic, and that kills it. Yes.
So that's why Food for Liberty went to that. Ronnie, Get the Tea has these pills. I forget what they are.
P5035?
Not the D365. There's another one we just got that reintroduces it seems like it's got the probiotics. We showed it on the last show. I'll go get a bottle.
Yeah, go get a bottle. This is very important.
Yeah,
do you want me to sing an intermission?
Yeah, the intermission. I think it's a colostrum. Is it the colostrum? No, I just had some colostrum. I love it. Increases my energy like I need that. Gastro Defense.
There you go.
Boy, we took one of those. Don't take two.
Don't take two.
Start with one.
Yeah.
When they start pumping the bacteria into your intestines, you may have to reintroduce some of this.
And then you can build up to two, but not at the beginning.
You try one and then you just stay home that day. Let me tell you, all of Ronnie's products and Get the Tea are extremely effective. We have their Life Change Tea Brewing. We know we're getting hit with this too.
Yeah.
We know that Immucyst and Citric Care kill the bugs and keep us healthy.
Okay, what do you got next?
Yeah, you can't get water. So
I just find that, well, we knew it was coming, but it's here now.
And then, this was the bizarre thing. She goes to Sam's Club, right? There's a cop outside of Sam's Club and a cop out inside. So all the grocery stores are posting cops. So I called the police department for Little Rock. What's going on? Oh, well, they're off duty. So they have the cars and everything. Yeah, well, I said good, because what happened was Arkansas, like Washington State, opted out of Obamacare. It's really a freaking mess. Over half the exchanges have declared bankruptcy. If you go in for a $100,000 operation, guess what? You're bankrupt because they tack it onto you.
And your family.
And your family. Oh, yeah, that's another thing. They tack it onto your kids and your father.
That's right. So
you have to file bankruptcy, but you can only file bankruptcy every 7 years. But now it's only every 8 years. So Obama, he wants you dead, I think. That's why God's cursing the White House from this day forward. Everything the White House does. Everybody who goes in and out of the White House will be cursed. So says the I am that I am, who was and is to come. Everyone connected to the White House, to the London bankers, to the Frankfurt bankers, to the Vatican Trust, to Rome. Everything connected with money and the destruction of this country is cursed from this day forward. So, yeah, said it, so it shall be. Anyway, you can't get water. You go on the Walmart website, you can't get water. You go on the Rite Aid website, you can't get water. She just went down the list. No water, no water, no water, no water.
This was in Arkansas.
This is Arkansas. So she called a friend who ran a grocery store. She was a manager at a grocery store. She says, no. She says, I want a pallet of bottled water. She says, no. We'll sell you half a pallet, but we don't have it in stock. So she went into the grocery store, bought everything she could buy. She just bought the store out. People know it's coming. You know it's coming. That's why we do the products we do. That's why we have another food channel for another food company, William Mount Cooking. That's why we talk about Food for Liberty. We want you ready for what's coming. What happened in Arkansas was like what's happening in Washington.
This just started today.
This started, today and yesterday. The governor opted for Arkansas Care, got a government grant, decided to avoid the Obama garbage, the liberal Zig Heil stuff, because it's all falling apart. Socialism, communism only lasts until somebody else's money is gone.
Yeah.
Zig Heil to Obama. Let me be the first to Zig Heil. The Arkansas governor realized Arkansas is broke. 30% of their entire state budget goes to Medicaid. So he says, fine. You get government money, you don't use illegal drugs, and you go to work. And what Utah found out 10 years ago is 50% of the welfare was cut. But then all the black unions sued. All the Jewish unions sued. I mean, there were a plethora of lawsuits. What's happening in Arkansas is there's no more lawsuits. They're all burned out. They have no more money. So Arkansas said, you come and you get a drug test. A few weeks ago, they cut off 250,000 people off of welfare, just in Arkansas alone. That's why the police are parked in front of the stores. They're going to riot. They're going to get hungry. They're screaming at the welfare department. We did a story about how they're trying to pit blacks against whites by giving, yesterday, we're going into Lincoln Pharmacy, how many minutes?
You're at 14.
Okay, I'll cut this off short. An Oriental gal who didn't speak English, who lives in Salishan, which is a welfare place, drove in a brand new Mercedes and pushed her way through the parking lot. She didn't give a rat's rip. These people have been sucking off the government dole for too long, and Arkansas is trying to eliminate it.
They don't have any money anymore.
No, the states are broke.
They're broke.
This state spends 25% of its money on Medicaid, and about 50% on welfare. There's no money for roads, there's no money for police, there's no money for anything. So they said, fine, you take our money because you want to have a baby out of wedlock, you're going to get drug tested. 250,000 people off of welfare in 1 month. And it's going to get worse because they didn't test everybody. Over 50%, and for the women with kids out of wedlock, it's closer to 75 to 80%. They're going to get thrown off welfare, and if you want to get your welfare check back, you pay your money to go to a private hospital and show me you're not using drugs. So all the state programs are getting cut, so they're bringing the police in expecting huge black riots. That's what they want. They want the blacks to riot. They want to pit one against the other. So anyway, this is something you're not going to read anywhere else. Things aren't so hunky-dory. Jane, do you have any
No,
that shocked her last night. She said, enough. We got to put this on the air. There's 2 4.5 earthquakes right here.
Thank you for joining me today. And in this video, or this set of videos, I'm going to cover Big Brother and some other interesting news about the, not really takeover of America, but subversion or fall of what was known as America. Russian general, the USSR collapsed and the same fate has been prepared for the USA. This is from shithitthefanplan.com. It's a good website from October 2nd. In the following video commentary, Russian general asks some interesting questions and includes his own thoughts, perhaps on a non-official Russian position, about the variety of topics that include the end of the U.S. dollar hegemony, the orchestration of the 9/11 attacks to engage America in a Mid-East war, the puppeteers behind the politicians, and the coming premeditated collapse of the U.S. as we know it. While here in the United States we remain enclosed in a propaganda bubble controlled by Western multi-billion-dollar media conglomerates, business interests, and political alliances, there can be no doubt that the other schools of thought exist throughout the world. What may seem like reality to our populace is perhaps nothing more than an illusion, which I think we can all agree on. It says the United States does not exist in a vacuum, and as such we simply cannot ignore the assessments, outlooks, and opinions of foreign leadership as they pertain
But no, I don't want to even think about it right now. I'm not doing that. We're going to set up a committee at some point in the not too distant future. But I just don't want to think about it right now. I want to finish it off. Well, I think he's fantastic. I think Chris Christie is fantastic. So certainly he would be somebody. No, I am me. You know, it's interesting, Sarah. I hear that, he'll be presidential, he'll be not presidential, he'll do this. It's very easy to be presidential. By the way, much easier, but I'm not playing a part. Look, I started off with 17. I'm down now, I'm winning it. It's over. As far as I'm concerned, it's over. These two guys cannot win. There's no path. So why would I change? If you have a football team and you're winning, and then you get to the Super Bowl, you don't change your quarterback, right? So I'm not changing. I think we're going to do great in the general. Well, I may act differently, but my thought process is the same. When I speak to a group of 10 people in a conference room, I'm not going to be speaking the same way I spoke in Pennsylvania yesterday to 25,000 people. It's a very different thing, but I'll be saying very similar things. Yes, go ahead. I'm doing a foreign policy speech, yes. Yeah, which I look forward to. Well, it's an interesting question. I've had many, many people write in, tweet in, modern way of writing, but write in, tweet in, call in, please don't change, just stay the way you are. So, look, I'm not changing. You know, I went to the best schools. I'm like a very smart person. I'm going to represent our country with dignity and very well. But I don't want to really change my personality. I think, you know, it got me here. Somebody said, if you changed and if you were that way, you wouldn't be maybe where you are right now. You know, we beat a lot of people. A lot of people are sitting back saying, what happened, darling? Why are we sitting here? We're watching television. Don't forget, when I announced, there were many favorites that were going to win. One of those people raised over $100 million in a PAC and a lot of money personally. Others had other big advantages, governors of major states, et cetera, et cetera. They were all going to do great. They were all going to do great. But one after another, and here we stand with big 5 victories over 60%. David?
Tonight in her speech, Hillary Clinton took a chunk out of you and basically said she's going to have a theme about love trumping hate. How do you fight back against someone who calls you a hateful person?
Sure. I mean, I call her Crooked Hillary. She's crooked. She'll be a horrible president. She knows nothing about job creation. Her husband signed NAFTA, which destroyed this country economically, I will tell you. You look at New York State, you look all over New England, you look at Pennsylvania, NAFTA was a disaster. Her husband signed it, and it was a disaster for this country. Hillary will be horrible, absolutely horrible on economic development. She will be terrible on jobs. She knows nothing about jobs, except for jobs for herself. And when it came to answering the phone, at 3 o'clock in the morning, she was sleeping, okay? She wasn't, with Benghazi and all of the other problems. You look at what she did with Syria. You look at what she's done in so many different ways. She will not be a good president. She doesn't have the strength. She doesn't have the stamina. I know about dealing with China. I've made billions of dollars dealing with China. China can be dealt with, and you can get along with them. But Hillary does not have the strength or the stamina to deal with China or other things. But bottom line is, one of the big problems our country has is problems with trade, where you have China, Japan, Mexico, so many countries just ripping us left and right. The politicians cannot handle that problem. 2 reasons. Number one, they don't have the competence to do it. Number two, most of them are paid off through campaign contributions so that they don't touch certain things that the people want touched. When people are making less money in real wages than they were 18 years ago, and then some people say, wow, he had a big crowd. That's one of the big reasons. I mean, you have people making less money today, as you know, because you see every stat. Less money today, David, than they made 18 years ago. And in some cases, they're working 2 jobs. So they're getting older and they're working harder. Shouldn't be that way.
You're not worried at all, though, about being labeled?
No, I don't worry about it. No, I don't worry. I'm not a hateful person. I'm a person that loves people. And make America great again. I mean, that's just the theme. I mean, she's going with that because she thinks it's great. I'll do far more for women than Hillary Clinton will ever do, including, remember this, including protecting our country, because she will not be good with the military. She will not be good with protecting our country. And she's had her shot. And she also raised her hand when it came to Iraq, and she shouldn't have voted. And if you remember, just take a look at the things that Bernie Sanders was saying about Hillary Clinton. She said she's not qualified. He said she is not qualified to be president. But he said something else that was, because qualified, what's qualified? I mean, you got to go out, you got to run, and you see what happens. But he said some things about her that were so incredible, and so incredibly bad. There's a great level of hatred right there, but he's been telling the truth. And I really mean it. I think Bernie Sanders should run as an independent. I think he'd do great. Okay. I think the party is seeing me that way. I'm getting calls that, as I said, you wouldn't believe. I'm getting calls from people that I really can't even know how they can do it because they've said such horrible things about me, and now they want to join the team. Chris can tell you that. Ben Carson can tell you that. Other people can tell you that. I'm getting calls. Corey can tell you. Paul can tell you. We're getting calls from people where I actually say, how could you do this? How can you do this? How can you do it? And they have no problem. But the fact is, names that you wouldn't believe, names that you interview and say, oh, Trump, 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 and now they're calling they want to join the team. Oh, well, a lot of them will be coming out soon. They want to come out very soon. Yes. Sure. I mean, tomorrow's going to be, I think, interesting. It's going to be some of my views on foreign policy and defense and lots of other things. So we'll be discussing, and part of it is the economics. I mean, I was asked a question recently by Wolf Blitzer on CNN, and he talked about NATO. I gave a great answer. I gave an answer that at first people didn't like, and then they said, you know what, Trump is right. Experts said. I said it's obsolete, and too many people are getting a free ride because we're funding 72, 73% of NATO. You have 28 countries, and many of these countries are just taking advantage of the United States. And you have to pay up because we don't have a country with 19 trillion in debt that can afford this anymore. You have to pay up. And part of what I'm saying is we love our countries and we love our allies, but our allies can no longer be taking advantage of this country. This isn't 40 years ago and it's not 20 years ago. This is now. And we have to rebuild our infrastructure. We have to rebuild our country. We have to get rid of ISIS, and we have to get rid of them fast. Our military is totally depleted. We have to build it up. It's going to be the cheapest thing we can do. And a lot of great things are going to happen. We're going to make America great again. No, you're going to really hear different things. Yeah, very. I'll never change one thing. You know what I will never change? Make America great again. I will never change. That's one thing. No, it's not going to be the Trump doctrine. And you know what I say? It won't be the Trump doctrine because in life you have to be flexible. You have to have flexibility. You have to change. You know, you may say one thing and then the following year you want to change it because circumstances are different. And I've followed people for years, and I have friends that are the most successful people in the world. Many of them are endorsing me. Carl Icahn, many of the great business people are endorsing me. You have to have flexibility. You can't say, this is my doctrine, I will not move, because the world changes, countries change, leaders change, lots of things happen, so you can't say that. Okay, yes, sir, go ahead. We don't have a ceiling. You know what our ceiling is? I think it's 100%. We don't have a ceiling. And again, the ceiling was always so unfair because I'm going to just do it again because I want to do it because it's so important. But the ceiling, wait a minute. The ceiling, they kept saying he doesn't hit the 50%. Well, now they don't say that anymore. But how do you hit 50% when you have 16 people in a race? You can't do it. No, you don't understand. I have many people running. I think I'm going to win New York. No other Republican can say it. I think I'm going to win, conservative voters. Did you see the polls where they're coming out tonight? The most conservative people in the Republican Party tonight back Donald Trump. The most conservative, okay? The most. Got to see the polls. Go ahead. Yeah, debt is the single biggest question I'm getting, student debt. And we're going to work on that. We're going to make it much different. The biggest problem the students have, they have the problem with debt, but they go to a good college, they borrow right up to here, and they're choking on debt, and they graduate, they work hard, they get good marks, and then they can't get a job. I'm going to bring jobs back to this country like you've never seen. That's the biggest problem. Well, we have a lot of contrasts in terms of jobs. We have a lot of contrasts in terms of how I would handle Wall Street. Look, Hillary Clinton is funded by Wall Street, folks. I mean, she's going to get the nomination unless she gets herself indicted with respect to what's happening with the emails, okay? You know, what I don't understand, you look at what's happened to so many other people, and they went through hell. Their lives have been destroyed for doing less than what Hillary Clinton did. What she did is an outrage. It's an absolute criminal outrage. And for her to be able to run as a Democrat, that's why maybe Bernie Sanders isn't finished, But the only way you can say that is if something happens to her. She's being protected by the Democrats because what she did, and I see it, and whether I read about it in the papers or I watch it with experts, legal experts on television, virtually every single one of them said what she did is a criminal act, and what she did is a very, very dangerous thing for our country. And yet here she is running for president. So I think that Hillary, honestly, she's a flawed candidate, and I think she's going to be easy to beat. I think she's going to be much easier to beat than most of the 16 people that I competed with just recently. Go ahead. To me, always the number one security threat to the United States is nuclear. That's our biggest threat. It's our biggest risk, the power of weaponry. And we have to be unbelievably careful. The single biggest, it is not global warming. President Obama said the biggest threat to our country is global warming. That's called, give me a break, okay? The biggest threat to our country is nuclear, and we cannot let Iran get a nuclear weapon. We're going to do something where we'll have a real partnership with China. You know, we have a lot of power over China. China has rebuilt itself by making a fortune over us. China has power, tremendous power, over North Korea. We have to be very vigilant on North Korea. We cannot let this guy go much further. And China should handle that problem. China can handle that problem very easily. They say they can't. But they're toying with us, okay? They're toying with us. We have a lot of power. We're going to have a great relationship with China. We're going to have a great relationship with Putin and Russia. But let me tell you, China has a lot of power over North Korea, a tremendous amount of power. They just refuse to use it, and they refuse to talk about it, and they're toying with us. And right now, they don't respect us. They don't respect our president. And because of that, they're getting away with murder. And this guy is getting away with murder. What's going to happen is, and something very important to me and to a lot of other people, but very, very important to me, is nuclear weaponry. That is your single biggest threat in the world today. Go ahead, Tom.
Are you worried at all that you could possibly be running for president in November and also standing trial for Trump University?
No, that's a civil case, very simple. I'm going to win that case very easily. Yeah, go ahead.
There's politics behind
Go ahead, Sarah, go ahead. Well, my unfavorables have come down a lot over the last few weeks. Well, remember this. Okay, I saw it on all of the cable stations and a lot of the networks, and I read it in a lot of papers. I've had 55,000 negative ads against me. When I ran in Florida, I had 14,000 negative ads, millions and millions of dollars, and I won in a landslide. I've had negative ads all throughout, and I've won races in a landslide, okay? In a landslide, you know it, you report it, you all report it. I'm not, even Carl would agree to that, right? I mean, landslides. And yet I have this tremendous amount of, you almost say, do ads mean anything? I think we're going to hurt the industry pretty much because people are going to say, what does an ad mean? But I've had, now, largely the Reince Priebus. And let's say, oh, well, Trump was 12 short, or 15 delegates short, or 25 short, but 500 more than Cruz, and far more than that ahead of Kasich. So you go to a second ballot. Now, Trump by that time will be 5 million votes because of California and the size of California, and I think Indiana and other places. Trump by that time will be 5 million votes ahead of Cruz. Will be much more than 5 million votes ahead of Kasich. I mean, Kasich should be he got to get. I call him one. Now I change it. Now I change it to 1 in 46. I mean, how do you stay in a race? And I would have won Ohio had I not been given a dirty poll saying that Florida was tougher than I thought. I stayed in Florida for 2 more days instead of going to Ohio. If I spent 2 more days in Ohio, I would have won it. Okay. How do you pick a man on the second or third or fourth ballot who has millions of votes, 5, 6 million votes, less than Trump, and I'm the one that brought all these people into the party. That's why the Republican Party is up almost 70% from 4 years ago. And you know what's going to happen? Those people, at a minimum, they're going to be very upset, very angry, but at a minimum, they're just not going to vote. They're not going to vote. So how do you do this? How do you say, okay, Trump won by 5 million votes. Trump is 5, 6, whatever, 100 delegates more than Cruz and much more than that having to do with Kasich. And he brought millions of people into the party, and everybody is talking about the party worldwide, how hot the Republican Party. You know, some people used to say it stayed. Well, the Democrats are 35% down from 4 years ago. The Republicans are almost 70% up from 4 years ago. So, I mean, that's an amazing tribute. And that's not because of, believe me, that's not because of Kasich or Cruz. That's because of me. So here's the thing. How do you say to them, we're going to choose a man that lost by 5 million votes and 500 delegates. We're going to take him because Trump was 14 delegates short of winning on the first ballot. I don't think you can do that. Now, with that being said, I intend to get enough delegates, but that's it. Okay. Yes, ma'am. One more question. Go ahead. I'll stick with my feelings on immigration. If you look at what's going on immigration and just look at the record numbers of people right now that are pouring across the borders of this country, they're pouring, excuse me, I just read it. And I read it in actually a legitimate journal. All right. We need protection in our country. You look at the kind of crime, you look at what's going on economically. We need borders. And by the way, I want people to come into our country, but I want them to come in legally. They have to come in through a process. So I will do one more. Excuse me? Well, I think the only card she has is the woman's card. She's got nothing else going. And frankly, if Hillary Clinton were a man, I don't think she'd get 5% of the vote. The only thing she's got going is the woman's card. And the beautiful thing is women don't like her, okay? And look how well I did with women tonight. Okay. So ladies and gentlemen, thank you. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Trump, Trump, Trump.
To the global implications of current events. How did they ruin the USSR? Says this. And this is the video that we're talking about, so you get a little picture of him. And the links will be posted in YouTube's video description, so please go check those out. So he says, how did they ruin the USSR? They called the Soviet Union a prison for people and an evil empire. It says the same thing is being done to the U.S. We also intervened in Afghanistan. Do you remember how that ended? He says, it's the same thing with the United States, and the Americans can't do anything there. Now the entire Muslim world hates the U.S., and when the global mafia dumps the dollar, the entire world will think that Americans deserve this, but this won't benefit the people in our country, especially those who've been saving up dollars. There's another thing that we should take into account, the general says. In the U.S. lives 5% of the world's population, but Americans consume 50% of the world's energy resources. The global mafia sees this as a problem. Some of our people who fled to the U.S. and now live there on welfare live better there unemployed than they would have lived in Russia even if they were employed. The slave masters think that this situation in the U.S. is unacceptable because even the slaves live relatively well there. So the United States is doomed in this sense. And lastly, even if you're the head of a mighty state and you don't understand global politics and don't understand the methods of the global politics, you're still a hostage of the global mafia. It keeps using that term, global mafia. The leadership of the USSR and the leadership of the USA carried out an internal and external politics, i.e. your puppets, but the global mafia carries out global politics. It says the USSR collapsed and the same fate has been prepared for the USA. Then there's this article from 2009 that went through email lists that I received. American Capitalism Gone with a Whimper from Pravda. This is a Russian website. It must be said that like the breaking of a great dam, the American descent into Marxism is happening with breathtaking speed against the backdrop of a passive, hapless sheeple. Excuse me, dear reader, I meant people. True, the situation has been well prepared on and off for the past century, especially the past 20 years. The initial testing grounds was upon our holy Russia, and bloody test it was, but we Russians would not just roll over and give up our freedoms and our souls no matter how much money Wall Street poured into the fist of the Marxists. Those lessons were taken and used to properly prepare the American populace for the surrender of their freedoms, souls to the whims of the elites and their betters. First, the population was dumbed down through a politicized and substandard education system based on pop culture rather than classics. Americans know more about their favorite TV dramas than the drama in D.C. that directly affects their lives. They care more for their right to choke down a McDonald's soy burger, I would include the soy burger, and Burger King's than for their own constitutional rights. Then they turn around and lecture us about our rights and about our democracy. Then their faith in God was destroyed until their churches, all tens of thousands of different branches and denominations, were for the most part little more than Sunday circuses, and their televangelists and top Protestant mega-preachers were more than happy to sell out their souls and flocks to on the winning side of the pseudo-Marxist politicians or another, including, of course, the Zionists, right? Their flocks may complain, but when explained that they would be on the winning side, their flocks would ever so quickly reject Christ in hopes for earthly power. Even our holy Orthodox churches are scandalously liberalized in America. The final collapse has come with the election of Obama. His speed in the past 3 months has been truly impressive. His spending and money printing has been a record-setting, not just in America's short history in the world, and if this keeps up more than another, there's no sign that it will not. America, at best, will resemble the Weimar Republic, and at worst, Zimbabwe. The past 2 weeks have been the most breathtaking of all. He goes on and talks about a planned redesign of the American Byzantine tax system by the very thieves who use it to bankroll their thefts, losses, and swindles of hundreds of billions of dollars, saying that they make the Russian oligarchs look more than ordinary street thugs. In comparison, these men, of course, are not elected panel, but made up of appointees picked from the very financial oligarchs and their henchmen who are now gorging themselves on trillions of American dollars in one bailout after another. They're also usurping the rights, duties, and powers of American Congress or Parliament. Again, Congress has put up little more than a whimper to their masters. Then came Barack Obama, who now has the power, the self-given power to fire CEOs and assume other employees of private companies at will. Prime Minister Putin, less than 2 months ago, mind you this was in 2009, warned Obama and UK's Blair not to follow the path to Marxism. It only leads to disaster. Apparently, even though we suffered 70 years of the Western-sponsored horror show, we know nothing as foolish, drunken Russians, so let our wise Anglo-Saxon fools find out the folly of their own pride. Again, the American public has taken this with barely a whimper, but a free man whimper. So should it be any surprise to discover that the democratically controlled Congress of America is working on passing new regulation that will give the American Treasury Department the power to set fair maximum salaries, evaluate performance, and control how private companies give out pay raises and bonuses. It says here, Senator Barney Franks, a social pervert basking in his homosexuality, of course, amongst the modern enlightened American social or societal norm as well as that of the general West. Homosexuality is not only not a look down upon life choice, but is often praised as a virtue, and his Marxist enlightenment has led this effort. And finishing up with this article, the Russian owners of American companies and industries should look thoughtfully at the option of closing their facilities down and fleeing the land of the red as fast as possible. In other words, divest while there's still value left. The proud American will go down into his slavery without a fight, beating his chest and proclaiming to the world how free he really is. The world will only snicker. And private investigator Ross Perot warns America could be taken over. It's kind of a prophetic little announcement there. But, he's probably put there to give people maybe a choice of a third party. Never, kind of like Ron Paul, never really supposed to go there because the global mafia doesn't allow it. But he was talking about the sucking sound of jobs going overseas, which is what we've seen. He says, the last thing I ever want to see is our country taken over because we're so financially weak we can't do anything. He said nobody that's running as far as the elections really talks about it, the money spending, and about what we have to do and why we have to do it. They would prefer not to have it discussed. Then next up, Europeans must fight against global banking cartel. So global banking mafia, same thing, right? Chris Dorsey, an economist and banking analyst, said on Monday in an interview with Press TV that competitiveness is they control the system and the people in these nations. That's what I said, human assets, right? Human resources. They fight over the scraps. It's ridiculous. Over here, he says, what's going on and what's driving all of this is not sovereign nations like Germany and Italy, it's institutions that control those governments. We're talking about think tanks and Council on Foreign Relations, the Trilateral Commission, the RAND Corporation, all of these types of institutions. It's not the people inside those governments and the institutions that control the Eurozone countries. It's the European Central Bank, which takes orders from the Bank for International Settlements, right? In this country, in the U.S., it's the Federal Reserve Bank. These are private central banks. They have the same ownership. They make coordinated moves. Then Bear Stearns' email refers to bonds as sack of shit or a bag of shit. We're going to leave you to hold a bag of shit, right? That's the old saying. But the bank kept foisting them on investors, says a lawsuit. So a new lawsuit accuses Bear Stearns, now owned by J.P. Morgan, of knowingly pushing rotten mortgages securities onto investors before the financial meltdown. And UK health chief earns $366,000 on top of his salary amid recession. So it goes on, it says he's pocketed $366,000 on top of his government salary, total earnings to almost $500,000, which is 12 times more than the average nurse in the UK. And it's funny because, while he's making all that money, right, hospitals are letting patients die to save money so that he can get more. Hospitals are depriving elderly patients of food and drink to hasten their deaths as part of a cost-cutting measure to free up bed space, leading doctors warn. Remember this article, this story about not hiring smokers in Florida? We won't hire smokers, declared. So the beach policy, the Delray Beach town or city in Florida, is policy in place to save money. The messed up thing too is why don't they equate pharmaceutical stuff in there, right? Why don't they do that? Why are you taking Xanax? Are you taking something else? Why don't you have to declare pharmaceutical drugs? Why don't you have to declare that you have fluoride in your water? And you know what I mean? That should be equated too. See, it's discrimination, just like discrimination against people who go through toll booths, whatever, right? They're already discriminated because they have to, if they decide to pay with cash and not go through the little Easy Pass and stuff like that, then they have to pay more than the other person. And now they're actually, if they're paying high denominations of bills, they'll actually detain them. And this is like when we look back, it'll be, well, these are changes, right? These are things that are changes, right? Grassroots and that. but it's not. It's what I've mentioned before. It's engineer consent and manufacturer consent. You know, manufacturer consent, they use the government against you with all these laws to force you to do something and then say it was democratic, even though you didn't have a flippin' say about it. And engineer consent is all those brainwashed people who listen to television and stuff like that and get brainwashed, and then they actually convince themselves that what they're being told is the best thing for them, when it's really going to screw them and their fellow humans out and their future out. So they basically volunteer to do this, to allow it to happen. That's engineer consent. Renters have privacy and property rights too. Says Cato Legal Associate Sophie co-authored this blog, and saying that a person's home is a castle and thus affords certain protections and immunities, including the right to exclude unwanted visitors that apply whether you own or rent. So yeah, this is true. Ordinance authorizing general administrative searches of rental properties have been increasing and adopted by local authorities with little protection for privacy interests. These searches take place even if both the landlord and tenant believe it's not necessary, and the owner of the property even has to pay a fee for the unwanted search to receive a rental license. Here's a perfect example of engineer consent to manufacturer consent. The city sometimes makes initial requests for consent, but these are mere courtesy because the city proceeds with an administrative warrant, i.e. force, threat of force, and the gun in your face in the event of a refusal without a showing of probable cause to believe there's a housing code violation or other problems. So then it becomes what? Voluntary to involuntary. So this is taking place in Red Wing, Minnesota, and a group of landlords and tenants have challenged the inspection program, and on the basis of it being what? The ordinance is unconstitutional. And the Minnesota Supreme Court will decide whether to take the case this fall. Next up, Walmart workers ask for basic rights. Remember, I was just covering this, and Walmart calls riot police. Remember, they just had a quote, flash mob. It wasn't a flash mob. It was a group of school children that were singing God Bless America on 9/11, and they actually got told to leave. And Walmart called the police to have them basically escorted out of there. They said it was a big misunderstanding. I apologize. But you know how it is. These bastards, they push whatever they're going to do until someone complains. I'll leave you with this video, and then we'll return with Big Brother. Thank you.
Unpaid wages, non-payment of overtime, and non-payment of minimum wage. There are unsafe conditions that workers have brought to management's attention, and there's discrimination going on. Walmart needs to clean up their warehouses, respect workers' rights under the law, and take responsibility for what's happening in their own dispatches.
Could result in chemical and/or less lethal munitions being deployed. We are directing you to leave this area and return to your vehicles and/or other forms of transportation, including your bus. You have 5 minutes to disperse.
All right, if you think the economy is improving, jobs are growing, and the worst is over, our next guest says, sadly, you are dead wrong.
Joining us now, the author of The Real Crash, Peter Schiff. Pete, thanks for joining us. What do you mean? The worst isn't over? We're not turning the corner? Things aren't getting better?
Hardly. We've actually made all the problems worse. You know, when I wrote my original book, Crash Proof, How to Profit from the Coming Economic Collapse, in that book, I forecast the bursting of the housing bubble, the ensuing financial crisis, this Great Recession. But what I was really concerned about was not that. I thought the crash was going to come from what the government would do to try to revive the economy. That was the real crash. It's still yet to come, and it is the subject of this new book.
So you don't think anything has changed that allowed this crash to happen in the fall of 2008?
No, the problems are much worse. We're much more deeply indebted now than we were then. All the problems have been exacerbated. And what we have now is not a legitimate recovery. All we've done is borrow additional money and spent it. And we're counting the spending as economic growth when it's not. The debt is growing much faster than the GDP. And ultimately, we're going to have to pay this money back with interest. And the only thing that's keeping us afloat right now is 0% interest rates.
And why are they 0%?
Well, because the Fed...
It's counterintuitive that, you know, we keep telling people, you know, that debt clock right there is going to come back and bite us in the rear sometime, but it hasn't done it yet. There's no inflation.
Well, sure there is, and it's the inflation that's helping keep interest rates so low because the Fed is monetizing debt, it's printing money and buying treasuries. See, the biggest problem with the U.S. economy is that interest rates are too low. Interest rates are probably the most important price in a free market. They're involved in one side of every transaction. They need to be set by the market. Instead, we're setting interest rates the way the Soviet Union used to set the price of bread. And because they're too low, we borrow too much, we spend too much, we don't save enough, we don't produce enough.
You think we have to go bankrupt?
Well,
As
we
a
are
country?
bankrupt.
But you want us to declare bankruptcy?
Well, what we need to do, we have to let interest rates rise. But the problem is, when interest rates go up, the U.S. government can't afford to pay the interest on the debt, let alone the principal.
What do you mean let interest rates rise?
Well, the Fed is keeping them down.
Yeah, but you're saying eliminate the Fed then?
Well, no, the Fed just has to let interest rates go up. The Fed has to stop buying bonds.
They set a rate. And they set the rate at 0 right now. So
right, but that's too low. Let the market set the rate. How can the rate be 0?
You just said, on one hand, let the Fed set the rate, but then on the other hand, let the market set it. It's either one or the other.
Right. Well, the Fed can still be there and not set rates. It can let the market do it. Or the Fed has to move rates higher because rates are much too low. Nobody can make any money saving. Nobody's saving, so we don't have any legitimate capital to finance investment. We have to borrow it all from abroad. But when we let interest rates go up, the U.S. government can't pay its debts. Many of our major banks are going to fail. You think that $2 billion loss at J.P. Morgan is big. Wait till you see how much J.P. Morgan and Morgan Stanley and Bank of America are going to lose if the Fed lets interest rates go to where they need to go.
The name of the book is The Real Crash. Peter Schiff is just getting started. The book just came out, and he predicted everything that's happened before. And I hope you're wrong, but you seem very confident that you're right now. Peter, thanks so much.
Sure. Thank you, Peter.
The dollar collapse will be the single largest event in human history. This will be the first event that will touch every single living person in the world. All human activity is controlled by money. Our wealth, our work, our food, our government, even our relationships are affected by money. No money in human history has had as much reach in both breadth and depth as the dollar. It is the de facto world currency. All other currency collapses will pale in comparison to this big one. All other currency crises have been regional, and there have always been other currencies for people to grasp onto. This collapse will be global, and it will bring down not only the dollar, but all other fiat currencies, as they are fundamentally no different. The collapse of currencies will lead to the collapse of all paper assets. The repercussions to this will have incredible results worldwide. The dollar is the world's reserve currency. It supports the global economy in setting foreign trade, most importantly, the petrodollar trade. This fuels our corporate vampires that acquires and harvests the wealth of the world. The corporate powers suppress real assets like natural resources and labor to provide themselves massive profits. The fascist statist, collectivist model provides the money into the economy to fund an ever-increasing federal government. That government then grows larger and larger, enriching its minions with jobs to control their fellow citizens. Finally, to come full circle, the government then controls other nations through the military-industrial complex. This cycle will be cut when the mathematically and inevitable collapse of the dollar occurs. In order for our debt-based money to function, we must increase the debt every year in excess of the debt and interest accrued the year before, or we will enter a deflationary debt spiral. When debt is created, money is created. When the debt is paid off, money is destroyed. There is never enough to pay off the debt because there would be not $1 in existence. We are at a point where we either default on the debt, willingly or unwillingly, or create more money or debt to keep the cycle moving. The problem is, if you understand anything about compounding interest, we are reaching the hockey stick moment, where the more debt that is incurred, the less effective it is, and this leads us to hyperinflation. There are only two actors needed for this hyperinflation: the lender of last resort, or the Fed, and the spender of last resort, the government. These two can and will blow up the system. I believe they will wait until the next crises and the whiff of deflationary depression before they fire up the printing presses. That crisis is coming very soon, at the end of the summer or fall. The money and emergency measures are worn out. The fact that none of the underlying problems that caused the 2008 crisis have been resolved. The only thing that has happened is that instead of corporate problems, we now have national problems. In this movie, Greece will play a role of Lehman Brothers, and the United States will play the role of AIG. The problem is there is nowhere to kick the can down the road, and there is no world government to absorb the debt yet. So this leads me to the top 5 places not to be when the dollar collapses. Number 1, Israel. This Anglo-American beachhead into the Middle East was first conceived by the most powerful family in the world, the Rothschilds, in 1917. The Balfour Declaration said that there will be a Zionist Israel years before World War II and the eventual establishment of Israel. Israel has not been a very good neighbor to its Muslim nations, and has always had the two biggest bullies on the block at its back. When the dollar collapses, the United States will have much too much on its plate, both domestically and internationally, to worry about such a non-strategic piece of land. This will leave Israel very weak at a time when tensions will be high. This very thin strip of desert land will not be able to withstand the economic reality of importing its food and fuel, or the political reality of being surrounded by Muslims. Number 2, Southern California. The land of fruits and nuts turns into battlefield Los Angeles. 20 million people packed into an area that has no water, and thus food, is not good, to say the least. Throw on top of the huge wealth disparities and the proximity to a narco state, and this does not bode well. We have seen riots from Rodney King. What will happen when the dollar is destroyed and food and fuel stop coming into this area? People will get desperate and do crazy things, especially when a huge proportion of its citizens are on antidepressants. If food and fuel cannot get in, what about Prozac? At a time when people's worlds are falling apart, they lack the ability to deal with this new paradigm. If people come off these drugs too fast, they will suffer psychotic breaks, and you will have thousands of shootings or suicides. Number 3, England. The land of the Big Brother and former empire of the worldwide slave and drug trade will suffer heavily. The stiff upper lip that the British elite ingrained into the sheeple will not work anymore as the British population explodes. The human character will sacrifice and unite for a foreign enemy, but not if the enemy has always been the elite. The Anglo-American Empire may pull off another false flag to distract its population, but I feel this collapse will happen before they pull it off. This will make all eyes point at the British elite as solely responsible for this catastrophe. We have seen massive riots for soccer matches with hooligans. What will happen when this island with very little food and fuel gets cut off? Number 4, New York City, another large urban area living too high on the dollar hog. There is little doubt that all of the wealth in New York City, New Jersey, and Connecticut is derived off of Wall Street wealth. The savings and investments of the whole nation and much of the world flows through this financial capital. As the world wakes up to the massive financial fraud, this will lead to the destruction of capital like we have never seen before.
I want to talk about a specific event that will take place in America's very near future, which could actually bring our country and our way of life to a grinding halt. This looming crisis is related to the financial crisis of 2008, but it is infinitely more dangerous, as I'll explain in this video. As this problem comes to a head, I expect there to be riots in the streets, arrests on an unprecedented scale, and martial law enforced by the U.S. military. Believe me, I don't make this prediction lightly, and I have no interest in trying to scare you. I'm simply following my research to its logical conclusion. The same financial problems I've been tracking from bank to bank, from company to company, for the last 5 years have now found their way into the U.S. Treasury. You see, I can tell you with near 100% certainty that most Americans will not know what to do when commodity prices, things like milk, bread, and gasoline, soar. They won't know what to do when banks close and their credit cards stop working, or when they're not allowed to buy gold or foreign currencies, or when food stamps fail. In short, our way of life in America is about to change, I promise you. In this video, I'll show you exactly what's happening. You can challenge every single one of my facts, and you'll find that I'm right about each allegation I make, and then you can decide for yourself. Will you act now to protect yourself and your family from the catastrophe that's brewing right now in Washington, D.C.? I hope so. That's why I made this video. In short, I believe that we as Americans are about to see a major collapse in our national monetary system and our normal way of life. Basically, for many years now, our government has been borrowing so much money, very often using short-term loans, that very soon we will no longer be able to afford even the interest on these loans. Again, I say these things as an expert in accounting and financial research. You may not think things are that bad in the U.S. economy, but consider this simple fact from the National Inflation Association. Even if all U.S. citizens were taxed at 100% of their income, it would still not be enough to balance the federal budget. We'd still have to borrow money just to maintain the status quo. For example, when Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac collapsed in the summer of 2008, the U.S. government responded by simply guaranteeing all of their outstanding debt. Since then, these companies have recorded hundreds of billions of losses, all of which were passed along to the government. Yes, you can still get mortgages today, and yes, Freddie and Fannie are still in business. But the costs associated with these programs are piling up at the U.S. Treasury, and they are enormously expensive. These losses and trillions in other private obligations are now the responsibility of the U.S. government. The problem is, even before this crisis, our government was deeply in debt. With each additional commitment, we sink further and further into debt, closing in upon the moment that we can simply no longer afford even the interest payments on our obligations. According to even my most conservative calculations, using numbers provided by the Congressional Budget Office, a debt default by the U.S. government would be inevitable were it not for one simple anomaly, the one thing that has saved the United States so far. I'm talking about our country's unique ability to simply print more money. You see, the U.S. government has one very important weapon to use in this crisis. The U.S. is the only debtor in the world who can legally print U.S. dollars. And the U.S. dollar is known as the world's reserve currency. The dollar forms the basis of the world's financial system. It is what banks around the world hold in reserve against their loans. That's a secret that most politicians don't understand. As things stand now, the U.S. government can't go broke in any ordinary sense of the word because it can simply print dollars to pay for its bad debts. That's what it's been doing since March of 2009. That might sound pretty good at first. Since we can always just print more money, what's there to worry about? Well, let me show you. You see, as things stand today, America is the only country in the world that doesn't have to pay for its imports in a foreign currency. Let's say you're a German and you want to buy oil from Saudi Arabia. You can't just pay for your oil in German marks or the new euro currency because oil is priced in US dollars. So you have to buy dollars first, then you buy your oil. And that means the value of the German currency is of great importance to the German government. To maintain the value of its currency, Germans must produce at least as much as they consume from around the world. Otherwise, the value of its currency will begin to fall, causing prices to rise and its standard of living to decline. But in America, we can consume as much as we want without worrying about acquiring the money to pay for it, because our dollars are accepted everywhere around the world. In short, for decades now, we haven't had to produce anything or export anything to get all the dollars we needed to buy all the oil and other goods our country required. All we had to do was borrow the money. And boy, did we. Take a look at this chart. Even as late as the 1970s, America was the world's largest creditor. But by the mid-1980s, we'd become a debtor to the world. And since the late 1990s, we've been the world's largest debtor. Today, our government owes more money to more people than anyone else in the world. And that was before the financial crisis. In short, with all of these bad debts piling up, we've had to begin repaying our debts by printing trillions of new dollars. The impact of this is only just now beginning to be felt. Once our creditors figure out what's happening, they're going to be very angry. I believe they will either completely stop accepting dollars in repayment or greatly discount the value of these new dollars. I'm sure you think that sounds crazy, but as I'll show you, it's already happening. And that will make our consumption-led way of life impossible to afford. Just think about the price of oil. Access to cheap oil has been America's #1 gift of owning the world's reserve currency. This, along with several other government policies, has made gas cheaper in the U.S. than almost anywhere else in the developed world. I know you may think gas prices have skyrocketed in recent years, but look at how much less we pay than other developed nations. According to a recent study by Kiplinger's Personal Finance, we pay around $3.61 a gallon on average here in the U.S., but in Canada it's $5.56. The French pay a whopping $8.21. The Japanese pay $6.62. Australians pay $5.41, and the Chinese pay $4.54. And here's the thing. If oil is no longer priced in dollars, the price of oil for Americans will skyrocket immediately. It will change our lives overnight. Airline travel will get much more expensive. The cost to ship goods by truck to grocery stores around the country will get much more expensive. Farming itself will get a lot more costly. So will commuting to work, taking a taxi. Just about everything we do will suddenly get much more expensive. And remember, in order for prices to start skyrocketing, all that has to happen is that other countries start preferring payments in something besides U.S. dollars. The U.S. dollar has been the world's reserve currency for decades now, so most Americans don't have a clue about what the repercussions are of losing this status. You might think this could never happen, but it happens all the time when countries get too far in debt, or when they consume too much or produce too little. In fact, the same thing happened to Great Britain in the 1970s. Most people don't know this, but British sterling was the reserve currency for most of the world for nearly 200 years, for most of the 18th and 19th centuries. It continued to play this role until after World War II, when America was forced to prop up Britain's economy with foreign aid. Remember the famous Marshall Plan, when we gave billions to help European countries rebuild? Unfortunately, though, Britain pursued a socialist national agenda. The government took over all of the major industries. Like Barack Obama, Britain's leaders wanted to, quote, spread the wealth around. Pretty soon, the country was flat broke. The final straw for Britain came in 1967, when things got so bad the Labour Party, which is the socialists, decided to devalue the British currency by 14% overnight. They believed this would make it easier for people to afford their debts. In reality, all it did was make anyone holding British sterling 14% poorer overnight. It made everything in Britain much, much more expensive in the coming years. For the country as a whole, it ushered in one of the worst decades in modern British history. Most Americans don't know anything about Britain's winter of discontent in the late 1970s, when the government put a freeze on wages. There were continuous strikes in nearly every sector: grave diggers, trash collectors, even hospital workers. Things got so bad at one point that many hospitals were reduced to accepting emergency patients only. In 1975, inflation in Britain skyrocketed to 26.9% in a single year. The government also imposed what was known as the 3-day week in 1974. In short, businesses were limited to using electricity for only 3 specified consecutive days each week, and they were prohibited from working longer hours on those days. Television companies were required to cease broadcasting at 10:30 p.m. to save electricity. Imagine, Britain was a global superpower for 150 years, but when they started intentionally devaluing their currency, things went straight downhill. Maybe you don't think something similar can happen here, but I'm telling you, it's already underway. In fact, the exchange value of the U.S. dollar has plummeted in the past year. Look at this chart. From June 1st of 2010 to June 1st of this year, the U.S. dollar has plunged 12%. That's a huge move in the currency world. In short, people are quickly losing faith in the U.S. dollar. What happened to the British currency is now happening to the U.S. dollar. Not only will the price of gas, oil, and other commodities skyrocket in America, almost everything we consume will immediately get more expensive. All the clothing, furniture, and household goods we import from China, all the food we get from Central and South America, all the electronics, television, computers, and cars we get from Asia and Europe. In fact, it's happening right now before our eyes. The price of gold is up more than 100% since the financial crisis of 2009. Oil prices have doubled. Soybeans are way up. Copper prices are up more than 170% since 2009. Cotton prices are up 80% in just the past year. As Wesley Card, the head of a clothing company that includes brands like Dockers and Anne Klein, was quoted by the New York Times, "It's really a no-choice situation. Prices have to come up." This chart shows how much a few key commodities have skyrocketed in price just since the beginning of 2009. Of course, skyrocketing commodity prices are just the beginning. There are other disastrous consequences to the U.S. dollar losing status as the world's reserve currency. For example, there would be much less demand for U.S. dollars around the globe, so interest rates will skyrocket. Instead of getting a mortgage at today's incredibly low rates of 4.5%, it might cost you 8%, or even 10%, or 15%. Imagine what that would do to housing prices. Stock prices would likely plummet by at least 40% in a matter of weeks as a result of this event in the currency markets. It will cost every American business a lot more money for supplies and materials. No one will be able to get a loan, and no bank will want to make loans. In short, when the U.S. dollar loses its spot as the world's reserve currency, it will cause a brutal downturn in the economy, which I expect will be about 10 times worse than the mortgage crisis of 2008. You see, What will also happen as a result of this currency crisis and the end of the U.S. dollar as the world's reserve currency will be massive inflation, the likes of which we've never seen before. When everyone is trying to get rid of their dollars, the government is printing more and more to pay debts, and no one wants to own them, the crisis will reach epic proportions. It's all coming to a head soon, much sooner than people think. Remember, too, that in roughly the past 100 years, this type of debt crisis has reared its ugly head in Germany, Russia, Austria, Poland, Argentina, Brazil, Chile, the Ukraine, Japan, and China. I believe it will soon happen right here in the United States. Don't believe me? Well, the truth is that it's already happening at the local and state levels. Take a look. According to the Center on Budget and Policy Priorities, a Washington, D.C. based think tank, at least 46 states face huge budget shortfalls for 2011. The center reports that the total state budget shortfall could reach $160 billion in 2011. And although many states got federal help over the past year, that aid is now gone. The CBS News program 60 Minutes ran a story on this crisis in recent weeks and reported that, quote, there is a financial crisis looming involving state and local governments. The states have collectively spent nearly $500 billion more than they collected in taxes. There is also a $1 trillion hole in their public pension funds. So, what are these desperate governments trying to do? You won't believe their proposals. The state of Arizona, for example, announced in early 2010 that it is selling $735 million worth of government-owned buildings, but will still occupy them by paying a 20-year lease. The government is selling the legislative buildings, the House, the Senate, the state Capitol Executive Tower, the state fairgrounds, even prisons. In California, the state has taken the radical step of opening its prison doors and releasing thousands of inmates. About 11% of the state budget goes to the penal system. That's more than they spend on higher education. So California is slashing the number of inmates by 6,500 people next year. In other words, they're cutting loose about 4% of the prison population. Incredibly, other states, including New York, may do the same thing. In Georgia, the government is proposing taking out dead peasant policies on state employees. When these folks die, the money won't go to the dead person's family, but to the state's coffers to help pay for more programs, insurance, and pension liabilities. It's simply incredible, isn't it? State and municipal governments are so broke and so desperate that they are taking unprecedented steps to at least temporarily avoid bankruptcy. Nearly every state in the union is talking about legalizing some form of gambling to boost tax revenue. California still wants to legalize marijuana, even though it was defeated in the recent election. Of course, none of these ridiculous steps will work in the long run. And the truly amazing thing is that the U.S. federal government is in even worse shape than the local governments. The only reason we haven't seen the full brunt of this crisis yet on the federal level is because we've just continued to pile on more and more debt. The states can't print money, but the federal government can, at least for now. And for the moment, this is all that is preventing a currency collapse of unprecedented proportions. This is the important point. What most people don't realize is that the U.S. government can only continue printing dollars as long as the U.S. dollar remains the world's reserve currency. In other words, this is all going to fall apart much sooner than people think. In fact, it's already happening. The first steps are already well underway. It's happening right now before our very eyes. I can't stress this enough. You need to act now in order to protect your assets and grow your savings in the next few years. In the next few minutes, I'm going to show you exactly how I'm protecting my own money and what I recommend doing with yours. But first,
and we do begin with that breaking news, stunning millions of fans around the world. Pioneering music legend Prince has died at the age of 57.
He was so great that he could do it by himself, you know. The one thing that, you know, kind of spooked me about it all was he has a song called Let's Go Crazy.
Yeah.
And it says, don't let the elevator bring us down.
And he died.
One time when I was with him privately, He said, you know what the elevator is, right?
No.
I said, no, what's the elevator? He said, well, the elevator is the devil, right? It scared me. I don't like to talk like that, but he said that. And so for me, it was like really haunting when I read that he was found in an elevator.
But what do you think he meant by that? Did he have health problems?
That I don't know, right? What I know is that he was really health conscious. He was a vegan. He didn't abuse alcohol. I didn't know of him abusing drugs. He worked out, so, that also really concerned me because it made me think that, wow, so you mean you do all these things to take care of yourself and you die so young?
Rogers describes it as a giant room filled with shelves that filled up quickly with private sonic treasures, all sealed behind a door locked with a large spinning wheel.
The mid-'80s saw him explode into pop consciousness, with such massive hits as 1999 and Little Red Corvette.
He even played most of the instruments on his first few albums.
Freedom to produce, freedom to play all the instruments on my records, freedom to say anything I wanted to.
Skyrocketing to international fame. Over the years, Prince made it a point to own his own music, once protesting a record contract with the word slave on his face.
Prince taking Super Bowl 41's halftime show by storm, tearing it up from the middle of his cymbal-shaped stage. A massive storm, adding to the drama, the first time it had ever rained during the Super Bowl.
As fans gathered to pay their respects to Prince, something special happened. A giant rainbow stretched across the sky directly over the late singer's Paisley Park compound in Minnesota. The rainbow formed just hours after Prince was pronounced dead.
It had been raining at Paisley Park in the hours prior, but as mourners came to bring flowers and mementos, the clouds parted and a rainbow shined bright over the estate. Now, if you remember, in March, a rainbow appeared over Nancy Reagan's home that she shared with Ronald shortly after her death. So, coincidence? We'll let you decide.
One of ESPN's most popular analysts is out of a job tonight after a post about the transgender bathroom issue on social media.
Schilling is a former all-star pitcher and was one of ESPN's most high-profile baseball analysts.
I'm still kind of trying to figure out how the hell this all happened.
Schilling says he felt blindsided by the backlash he received after reposting this image showing a man dressed as a woman. Schilling adding his own comments saying, "A man is a man no matter what they call themselves," and "Now you'd need laws telling us differently? Pathetic."
I stated a fact. Men's bathrooms were designed for people that stand up and women's weren't. And it was nothing more than that. I mean, what if I had said, you know what, people make men's bikes just for men and women's bicycles for women?
And I know that as an American, I'm free to say anything I want. I also know that as an employee of Channel 5, I represent Channel 5. And the things I say could have consequences. So while Curt Schilling is free to express his opinions, there should be consequences if he expresses bigoted opinions.
Schilling's son also came to his dad's defense, saying on Facebook, "If he were a bigot, he would not have allowed my trans friends to stay over. He's respected pronouns and name changes."
And in this business, that's usually enough to get you fired. I know, by the way, he's not that good at his job.
But there's been no response from ESPN.
Nothing from ESPN
reaction
just
to
yet.
this yet. Right?
But response from Schilling on his blog,
he
saying
defended.
that this is my opinion.
Transgender rights led to this fight Tuesday outside Santee High School. Protesters skirmished over a new gender-neutral bathroom policy at the school. Across the country, state legislatures have passed bills restricting the rights of transgender individuals. And there's some irony to this situation because just a few years ago, Schilling's daughter was accepted to a softball team on a college team, and she was told by many people online some very filthy material that was posted against her. And Schilling spoke out saying women needed to speak up for themselves, and of course now he's facing this situation.
It's a new day today. People look differently, people act differently. We're much more of an accepting culture, and this is now at the forefront of rights in America.
Target is taking a stand on the transgender bathroom controversy playing out across the nation. Target said Tuesday that transgender customers can use restrooms corresponding with their gender identity.
Each person can now use restrooms that align with their personal gender identity.
I know that it's like a trend to be more like welcoming or open-minded towards that kind of issue.
As a woman shopping at Target, do you mind a man coming in as a transgender woman into the restroom?
No, not at all.
It's an ever-changing society, so business is business. I think that they're doing what they need to do to make things evolve in regards to business. And as shoppers, we probably would need to comply with that.
Dr. Eric Walsh was a respected director of public health in California, serving the poor in the trenches of the Los Angeles area. He also served on President Obama's Presidential Advisory Council on HIV and AIDS.
We had opened up a dental clinic for HIV-positive individuals, and we were able to fund this clinic and allow those individuals to get care.
Dr. Walsh was an associate pastor in his church. His desire to serve the sick is based on his religious faith.
My mother was a single mother, and what got us through, what kept us out of trouble, what led us down a path to education where I now have 2 doctoral degrees, was the fact that I came from a denomination that holds education in high regard, and medicine and medical missionary work in high regard. And all those things were part of what protected me growing up. So I've held on to those beliefs.
After accepting Georgia's offer to serve as the Director of Health for Northwest Georgia, Dr. Walsh began preparing to move his family across the country. Then Dr. Walsh received an unexpected request from the state. They asked him to submit copies of his sermons.
I submitted 4 sermons to someone in the department, high up in the department. They reviewed those sermons, and the next day I no longer had a job.
Politely sent them copies of the sermons themselves. They reviewed them, and the very next day they fired.
State officials called to let Dr. Walsh know he was fired by leaving him a voicemail. What they didn't realize is that they forgot to hang up their phones.
There's no warm way to say it anyway. You're out. Very fine.
They forgot to hang up the phone, and then I just hear laughter. And I just thought, man, this is pretty rough. I mean, they have to understand being in the field that me not getting that job is tantamount to the complete destruction of a career. And when they laughed, I mean, it was almost too much to bear.
No American should be fired for something they say in a sermon.
This is allowed to stand. It sets an incredibly terrible precedent for a country that's supposed to be based on certain inherent freedoms and rights. And if this is erased for Eric Walsh, it's erased for generations to come.
Good evening. Primary school pupils as young as 4 are being asked to choose the gender they most identify with before starting school. In a letter from Brighton and Hove City Council that's been sent to parents, they're asking them to support your child to choose the gender they most identify with.
Well, the move has been criticised by some parents who say that such young children don't have a sophisticated understanding of gender issues and it could be potentially harmful. But the council defended its actions as a response to the requests of families.
I would say that 4's far too young to be asking that question, and it complicates the scenario that doesn't need to be complicated.
I just thought it was a bit odd. Didn't think it was a question that needed to be asked so early in life.
I'm afraid this is symptomatic of what's going on across the country. Gender issues, gender identity, sexual issues are being foisted onto 4 and 5-year-olds. For heaven's sake, let's give these children a childhood. We can deal with these problems later in life.
Basically, I identify as non-binary, which means that I don't fully identify as 100% male or 100% female.
The form sent to parents of 4-year-olds starting school had a gender section, then underneath the following 2 sentences. We recognise that not all children and young people identify with the gender they were assigned at birth and may identify as a gender other than male or female.
Plant the seed into a child at the age of 4 that you can choose your gender if it's different than how you were created. And then you get to the college level where what you see there is the propagandizing of these students to the point where, well, whatever you want it to be. Where does this ultimately lead? Where is this ultimately going to go?
Where are their fluid standards of evaluation? I mean, clearly it's not based on any moral standpoint or any evidential standpoint. It's their opinion about it. And whereas another says, well, I don't have the right to really say that there are any standards for anything that goes on in life. Now, that is the world that we are up against. I think this, whereas we think we're talking on a common level of uniformity to say, you know, there is right, there is wrong. Hold on a second. You can't even assume that anymore, because what is right and wrong?
Histeria yang banyak berlaku sejak akhir-akhir ini. Mufti Kelantan Datuk Muhammad Syukri Muhammad berkata ia ada kaitan dengan fenomena El Nino yang melanda negara sekarang.
Perubatan Islam menjelaskan histeria berkait rapat dengan penjagaan kebersihan diri. Datuk Seri Baharudin Abu menegaskan jika kebersihan
berpunca dari lembaga hitam menyebabkan sekolah berkenaan menangguhkan sesi persekolahan
adalah disebabkan faktor ketakutan. Ini kerana budaya takut terhadap hantu dipupuk sejak kecil oleh ibu bapa menakut-nakutkan mereka dengan kehadiran makhluk halus.
Makhluk halus ini memang ada, tetapi kita seharusnya mendidik anak-anak jangan jadi anak-anak
SMK Kemumin dan SMK Kubang Kerian 3. Sebelum itu lebih 90 pelajar dan guru di SMK Pengkalan. Dalam kejadian terbaru, histeria menyerang pelajar di 3 buah sekolah menengah di Kota Baru, iaitu Sekolah Menengah Kebangsaan Pengkalan Cepa 1,
with great pleasure, therefore, that I hereby unveil the oldest new structure in the history of this city. Ladies and gentlemen, the Triumphal Arch of Palmyra. 3, 2, 1.
171 countries officially signed the new United Nations Climate Change Agreement today. It's the first of its kind. Critics claim the administration is bypassing Congress by calling it an agreement rather than a treaty, which would require congressional approval.
An upheaval, a massive change is required right now, one that leads to a new collective consciousness, a new collective evolution of the human race, inspired and enabled by a sense of urgency from all of you. You are the last best hope of Earth.
Three and a half years of craziness. The Antichrist will emerge. And people say, well, maybe it's one of the presidents. No disrespect. They're not smart enough, good looking enough, or articulate enough to be the Antichrist. I don't believe that. But someone's going to rise up. One world government, one world currency. We'll have the mark of the beast, some sort of a chip. Already I have chips in my animals, and you can track them. And it's scary how we're tracked by everybody from the IRS to the NSA to whoever, whatever. It's nuts. So we're right there. All that's going to be taking place.
We begin with that breaking news from Ohio. 8 people shot execution style at 4 different locations in a rural part of the state.
We continue our team coverage tonight with Columbia County investigators calling the shooting rampage the worst the county has ever seen.
In Columbia County, investigators say you can count the number of murders in a year on one hand. Although some of those murders have been violent in the past, Captain Andy Shedd says Friday night's killing spree is something he's never seen in all his years on the force.
It is shocking, and you try to wrap your head around it, and you still, of course, try to maintain your professionalism.
Shedd says this crime is similar to recent national ones.
I would definitely call it a mass casualty shooting in that we had 5 people shot and killed.
I think about like drug usage. Drug arrests are up like over 400% since 1970.
Began with more overdoses, more crime, more arrests. The heroin problem here in Northeast Ohio continues to grow, according to the people dealing with it firsthand.
I talked to police officers, sheriff's deputies, and health officials, and all of them told me that it's getting to a point where this epidemic is controlling everything.
It used to be that our most frequent call would be for shortness of breath, and that has been basically replaced with overdoses.
He told me they're seeing this kind of thing weekly.
Overdoses as a whole have tripled.
They're not alone. I talked to police officers and sheriff's deputies who simply said it's getting out of control.
This is overwhelming.
Spice-fueled mayhem playing out on the streets of Pinellas County. This incident just the latest in a growing trend around the Bay Area. Spice throwing people into fits of rage and seizures. It's legal, but people are dying.
This body camera footage from Pasco deputies shows what spice, a synthetic marijuana, does to people. This man still resisting even after he's tased 3 times and pepper sprayed, even more so recently.
While we're on a call, that we're usually passing another one and getting a call right after we leave this one.
Hello, everybody. I'm Elsa Ramon.
And good evening. I'm Jeff Vaughn. Now to a developing story in downtown LA. Tonight, a massive police and fire response after a mass overdose on Skid Row. It happened tonight near 5th Street and San Pedro.
Even a responding officer, a police officer, got dizzy from the drug substance in the air. He's seen someone high on it and says it's very scary. Listen.
One guy even actually saw me through blocked glass, which is actually supposed to be like almost bulletproof. And he saw me through and he punched it and broke the glass. That's how wound up he got.
Being able to talk about your faith in public schools for teachers, it's in the classroom, it's usually very difficult. And that's why some students in Mingo County have taken it upon themselves to spread their faith.
Videos of students preaching in the halls of schools have gone viral over the last few weeks in West Virginia. Students being introduced and accepting Jesus, and the display of faith has spread like wildfire.
It just starts spreading to more and more schools, and eventually the next big one I saw was Mingo County.
More than anything, students say it's the love they have for each other in Jesus that has sparked this movement.
I hope that everyone in the community gets to experience who Jesus really is, and they get to encounter the peace that comes with loving Jesus.
Beth Vaughn here in the RTV6 newsroom. Seeing ultrasound pictures of your baby is so exciting. I remember poring over those pictures time and time again, trying to memorize every feature of my baby. Now, mothers know that excitement, and one mom is now sharing all of that with the World Wide Web. And it's because of what she found inside the picture. She says if you look very closely, you'll see a picture of Jesus on the cross. Take a look here. Allie Meyer of Evansville, Indiana, shared these pictures with WYIE, and they've spread very quickly online. She told that TV station...
get worse and worse. You're going to have more World Trade Centers. It's going to get worse and worse, folks.
سنلاحقهم أينما ذهبوا سنقتادهم بإذن الله عبيدا كالكلاب.
فلقد بدأنا بك وسننتهي إلى البيت الأبيض المزعوم وسنجعله أسودا من نيراننا بإذن الله تعالى.
We will come to you with our weapons and explosives. You will not have safety even in the bedroom of your houses.
You know, we play by the rules. They don't play by the rules. We're not going to have too many victories.
Little do you know that Obama and the leaders of our church have a secret, sinister pact to hide from the public the most terrible warning encrypted inside our Holy Bible, the only prophecy that has remained obscured under thick veils to this day, because according to the final chapters of the Bible, Obama will not finish his second term. He is the 44th and last president of the U.S., and our country and every American citizen are about to face their greatest bedevilment from an enemy fiercer and more powerful than ISIS, Al-Qaeda, North Korea, and Iran combined. Right now, only a handful of church leaders know the true meaning of this biblical prophecy, and they swore a blood oath to take this sacred secret to their graves, because if this leaks out, it will cause panic among all faithful followers of the words of our Lord. Obama himself is unaware of the extent of the massacre that is to come, and there is nothing anyone can do to prevent this from happening. This ancient prophecy is coded within the visions of 4 men. These 4 evangelists are John the Apostle, Jeremiah, Isaiah, and Ezekiel. They were chosen to give a very precise and terrifying warning of things to come in the end of times. This prophecy will fulfill the act of God, and the world as we know it will perish in flames. Therefore, before going any further, I must warn you, what you are about to see is deeply disturbing, because it will link current events to ancient biblical prophecies step by step. Once you discover the chilling evidence of the words of our Lord coming true, there is no turning back. It is a revelation so powerful when you see the biblical evidence that this great, unavoidable ruination will come to reality. It will simply be impossible for you to go about your daily life like you used to before knowing the truth. And it all starts with one simple question. Does it not seem odd to you that America, the richest and most powerful country today, the only country who has liberated other nations from evil, the greatest evangelical nation on the earth, is not even mentioned in the Bible? After all, as we know it, the Bible accurately predicts so many other historical events. The 2 world wars, man reaching outer space, and the return of the Jews to their homeland after centuries of exile. All of these events were seen and described by the prophets in their writings. America played the key role in all of this. Yet the church does not teach America's place in the Bible, and there is a very good reason for that. One which I will reveal in a few moments. I will show you exactly why this knowledge is a closely guarded secret, and you will see that we are getting closer and closer to fulfilling this ancient prophecy, as the world leaders and their armies are covertly maneuvered into place in preparation for the events that lead to the second coming of our Lord. Most importantly, you will see the exact reason why this prophecy will come true before the 1st of January 2017, and you will know God's wrath will bestow upon our lands with great vengeance. But I will warn you whom to fear. Fear him who, after he is killed, has authority to cast into hell. Yes, I tell you, fear him. Luke 12:5. The adversaries of the Lord shall be broken to pieces. Against them he will thunder in heaven. The Lord will judge the ends of the earth. He will give strength to his king and exalt the power of his anointed. 1 Samuel 2:10. But these are written so that you may believe that Jesus is the Christ, the Son of God, and that by believing you may have life in his name. John 20:31. As it is God's will that you are here now, witnessing the unmasking of evil. It is the will of our Lord and Savior that you and your family see this and be saved from all the wrongdoings of our times, just as the Holy Word says. I have told you these things so that in me you may have peace. In this world